Hello, this is Shantanu Ghosh once again. Um, I welcome you all once again for our concluding discussion on Munshi Premchand's Godaan. In the last lecture, we had discussed the main plot concerning with the protagonist Hori and Dhania in Godaan. In this lecture, I wish to you know critically appreciate some of the important aspects of that novel. Dear students, Godaan has been called an epic, a saga unfolding itself in 36 chapters. But why would anybody, read Godaan um, and enjoy such a voluminous work on the simplest of the themes, that is the exploitation of peasants by the moneylenders or the zamindars, feudal lords. Uh, the theme itself doesn't appear to be, very glamorous, so to say. Although it has been a recurrent, uh, you know, theme amongst for most of the writers, because there is a great divide in the society, rich and poor, everybody. So the novel, the story, the theme doesn't appear to be you know sensational, but believe me, the novel itself is much more than a single farmer's you know struggle to buy a cow, or you know the account of his day-to-day activities, incidents related to him, uh, probably small details of his life and times. uh, you see, there are several plots. The one, mm, that of Hori and his wife Dhania, that we already know from our last discussion. There is again a story. There are certain subplots, I said. Again, a story of Gobar and Junia. Uh, the story of Rai Sahab and his friends in the village Semri. Uh, there are characters like Dr. Mehta, Miss Malti, Chandra Prakash, the mill owner, you know, and Mata Deen, Bhola, a lot of characters. So, and and every character, takes the central stage according to the need of times. There are, passages devoted to the development of a single character, although not very important. Let's say Junior. The walk, Gobar takes from, Bhola's home to his home along with Junia is a fascinating one, in which Junia tells him about, her life and experiences of being a widow, and, how society treats her. And the entire setup of the novel is a big one. You know, there are about 15 major characters. If you read this novel, it is reminiscent of uh, Victorian novels. Grand scheme, a lot of incidents, a lot of characters, and probably Dickens would have, approved uh, Premchand styles of writing, with one major difference that, probably if you compare Dickens and Premchand for a while, the Dickens had a lot of characters, a lot of incidents, but his plot was not, uh, you know, integral. Uh, you know, the incidents were not integral to the plot. But Premchand excels here. His plot, eh, the incidents rather in this plot are form a cohesive whole, and they are very much important from the outcome or the progression of the story. One, you tends to come across various, criticism of this uh, novel, different approaches, but all of them are, unanimous in one aspect, that, it is uh, you know, a social document. Why social document? Because it exposes the great divide in the masses, that of, haves and have nots. But to me, this is a misconception, that the form of Godaan is that of a novel bordering social realism. On the one hand, there are jamidars and, the high caste agents as villains, and on the other, the poor and underprivileged lower caste villagers as heroes. This is undeniably a novel that dramatizes the crisis of rural poverty and the corruption of ruling classes. And many a reader would eventually, end up sympathizing with the protagonist Hori, uh, an individual who is poverty stricken, hapless, exploited, a silent sufferer. Hallmarks of being typical tragic hero. But is Godaan a tragedy? That is the question. Aristotle might say yes, because, the plot arouses emotions of pity and fear among the readers, because somebody who reads Godaan, his heart goes out to that hapless, Hori, his unfulfilled desire, his suffering, his anguish. But, you know, and it obviously does have, it does have some cathartic effect as well. But let me remind you, tragedy is also about a hero who is, you know highly placed in the society, who has some qualities, great qualities of head and heart, and whose downfall would appear to be spectacular. And more often than not, in tragedy, you see that tragic flaw in that character, Hamasha. So, what is the tragic flaw of Hori? Agreed that he was submissive. He did compromise a lot of times. He could not muster um courage to fight against the exploitation rampant in the society. He was suffering, no doubt, but he could not, stand against, take a definitive stand against, uh, these people, knowing very well that, uh, he's not going anywhere if he, keeps mum. So, but the point is, uh, the question worth asking now would be, was Premchand trying to write a tragedy, a novel with tragic consequences? Uh, to me, no, it's not the case. I feel he was being realistic there. He wrote a novel, touching the soul of Indian peasantry, and although there appear to be two different fractions of the society, the story is not of a fight against social injustice, by no means. Rather, it's a realistic picture of the uh, rural life, its simplicity, its grossness, its beauty, its squalor, its highs, its lows. It depicts the life and the characters as it really was. Uh, if peasants like Hori were losing out to the feudal system, the zamindari system, so were the feudal lords were losing out to capitalism. So one, there is no distinct class as one is oppressor and second is the victim. You see, people say that Hori is a victim and the money lenders or the zamindar is the oppressor. But the role changes dramatically when you see that capitalism, capitalists come and the zamindars also are losing out. So it's very difficult to ascertain who is the victim or who is the oppressor. Uh, Premchand's novel did not end on a happy note because, like life, there is no poetic justice, and that is where you see that it's not, you know a novel of social advocacy. It's a realistic novel portraying the condition of villages. One another The another aspect here is that, talking about characters, there are a lot of characters, but one fails to realize that the village itself becomes a magnificent character in this novel, with a particular, having a particular uh, trait. It serves as the backdrop for all the incidents, and because that village itself plays its role wonderfully, this drama appears to be all the more important. So the role of that rustic setting can never be ignored in this novel. Although there is a reference of the city, I understand Lucknow has been mentioned and the life and times, but this is primarily that village where that protagonist lived all his life. Uh, this novel is again a novel of human relationships. And what I feel, Premchand appears to be very progressive in this novel. Let us analyze some of the human relationships there, especially men and women, Huri and Dhania. It's not a typical romantic relationship. It's a relationship of a husband wife, understanding, based upon understanding, sympathy, and certain regard for each other. Then we have Chandra Prakash, Khanna, and Govindi. Uh, Again, a different aspect of relationship where we see Govindi as a wife, abide, who has immense faith. She is always faithful to her husband, but her husband is not. You know, he is more or less interested in other women, Malti. So, a wife's abiding love for an errant husband has been depicted wonderfully. Then there are no, there is Gobar and Dhania's relationship, Junia rather. Uh, since Junia was a widow, uh, Premchand couldn't muster as I said enough courage to show that there is uh, you know he didn't show their marriage. They never married, but they lived like uh, husband and wife, had a son. And so, was he referring to a changing social scenario where widow marriage would be acceptable? Then there is the reverse of it, Matadin and Celia. Matadin being a Brahmin, and Celia that of a lower caste. So again, that rebellious streak of Premchand, he showed what he saw. And on a parting note, I would like to say that was he uh, asking for or advocating people, people to marry for love? So I would suggest you keep on thinking on the other aspects as well. And thank you very much for your patient hearing.